The Future of the Colored Race by Frederick Douglass. It is quite impossible at this early date to say with any decided emphasis what the future of the colored people will be. Speculations of that thus far have only reflected the mental bias and education of the many who have essayed to solve the problem. We all know that the Negro has been as a slave. In this relation, we have his experience of 250 years before us and can easily know the character and qualities he has developed and exhibit during this long and severe ordeal. In this new relation to the environments, we see him only in the twilight of 20 years of semi-freedom, for he has scarcely been free long enough to outgrow the marks of the lash on his back and feather on his limbs. He stands before us today, physically and maimed and mutilated man. His mother was slashed to agony before the birth of his babe, and the bitter anguish of the mother is seen in the countenance of his offspring. Slavery had twisted his limbs, shattered his feet, deformed his body, and distorted his features. He remains black, but no longer comely. Sleeping on the dirt floor of the slave cabin in infancy, cold on one side and warm on the other, a forced circulation of blood on the one side and chilled and retarded circulation on the other, it has come to pass that he has not the vertical bearing of a perfect man. His lack of symmetry, caused by no fault of his own, creates a resistance to his progress which cannot well be overestimated and should be taken into account when measuring his speed in the new race of life upon which he has now entered. As I often said before, we should not measure the Negro from the heights which the white race has obtained, but from the depths from which he has come. He will not find Burke, Ranton, Curran, or O'Connell among the oppressed and famished poor of the famine-stricken district of Ireland. Such men come of comfortable ascendants and sound parents, laying aside all prejudice in favor of or against race, looking at the Negro politically, socially, related to the American people generally, and measuring the forces arrayed against him, I do not see how he can survive and flourish in this country as a distinct and separate race. Nor do I see how he can be removed from the country, either by annihilation or exportation. Sometimes I have feared that in some wild paroxysm of rage, the white race, forgetful of the claims of humanities and the precepts of the Christian religion, will proceed to slaughter the Negro in wholesale, as some of that race have attempted to slaughter Chinamen, and as it had been done in detail in some districts of the southern states. The grounds of this fear, however, have in some measure decreased, since the Negro has largely disappeared from the arena of the Southern politics and has been betaken himself excuse me, to industrial pursuits, and the acquisition of wealth and education, though even here, if over prosperous, he is likely to excite and dangerous antagonism for the white people do not easily tolerate the presence among them of a race more prosperous than themselves. The Negro has a poor, ignorant creature does not contradict the race pride of the white race. He is more a source of amusement to that race than an object of resentment. Malignant resistance is argument as he approaches the plane accompanied by the white race, and yet I think that the resistance would gradually yield the pressure of wealth, education, and high character. My strongest conviction as to the future of the Negro, therefore, is that he will not be expatriated, or annihilated, nor will he forever remain a separate and distant race from the people around him, but that he will be absorbed, assimilated, and will always appear finally as the Phoenician now appear on the shores of the Shannon. In the features of a blend race, I cannot give at length my reasons for this conclusion. Perhaps the reader may think that the wish is father to the thought, and may this wrath denounce any conclusion as utterly impossible. To such I would say, tarry a little and look at the facts. 200 years ago, there was two distinct and separate streams of human beings running through this country. They stood as opposite streams of ethnological classification, all black on the one side and all white on the other. Now, between these two extremes, an intermediate race has arisen, which is neither white nor black, neither Caucasian nor Ethiopian. And this intermediate race is constantly increasing. Now, it is said that the martial alliance between these races is unnatural, abhorrent, and impossible. But exclamation of this kind or any shake the air, they prove nothing against a stubborn fact like that which confronts us daily and which is open to the observation of all. If this blending of the two races were impossible, we should not have at least 1/4 of our colored population composed of persons of mixed blood, ranging all the way from a dark brown color to the point where there is no invisible admixture. Besides, it is obvious to common sense there is no need of passage of law or the adoption of other devices to prevent what is in itself possible. Of course, this results will not be reached by any hurried or forced processes. It would not arise of any theory of the wisdom of such blending of the two races. If it comes at all, it would come without shock or noise or violence of any kind. And only in the fullness of time will it be so adjusted to surrounding conditions as hardly to be observed. I would not be understood as advocating intermarriage between the two races. I am not a propagandist, but a prophet. I do not say that what I say should come to pass, but what I think is likely to come to pass, and what is inevitable. While I would not understood as advocating the desirability of such a result, I would not be understood as depreciating it. Races and various of the human family appears and disappear, but humanity remains and will remain forever. The American people will one day be truer to this idea than now, and will say with Scottish-inspired son, a man's a man for that. When the day shall come, they will not be pervert and sin against the rarity of language as they now do by calling a man of mixed blood a Negro. They will tell the truth. It is any prejudice against the Negro which calls everyone, however nearly connected with the white race, however remotely connected with the Negro race, a Negro. The motive is not a desire to elevate the Negro, but to humiliate and degrade those of mixed blood. Not a desire to bring the Negro up, but to cast the mulatto and the quattro down by forcing him below an arbitrary and hated color line. Men of mixed blood in this country apply the name Negro to themselves, not because it is correct ethnological description, but to seem especially devoted to the black side of their parentage. Hence, in some cases, they are more noisily opposed to the conclusion to which I have come than either the white or honestly black race. The opposition of amalgamation, of which we hear so much on the part of colored people, is for most part the merest affection and will never form an impassable barrier to the union of the two varieties. Once again, this is the future, the title, The Future of the Color Race by Frederick Douglass.